All right, so if you are in the filmmaking business, this one is definitely for you. This is something that our office does all the time. When we have our clients who get their films, let's say, onto Netflix or Hulu and these other platforms, it's a huge win. But what happens when you get sued for your film, or in this case, we're going to be talking about a mini-series. So I'm an entertainment attorney. I've been doing this for over 11 years. I specialize in entertainment law, but essentially it's business law combined with intellectual property. With filmmaking comes your intellectual property rights. But what about when you make a documentary? What are the rules? And specifically, are you allowed to use other people's footage in your film without needing to get a license? We're going to be talking about all of that. So be sure to subscribe right now and let's jump into it. All right. So what happened? A copyright lawsuit was filed on August 19, 2025. This is in a federal court in New York, which is alleging that Netflix's documentary miniseries Gone Girls, the Long Island serial killer, improperly used a YouTuber's interview, which is with the accused murderer, Rex Heuermann, without obtaining permission. The plaintiff, Amira, who operates the YouTube channel Bonjour Reality and conducted the only known pre-arrest video interview with Heuermann, which was done on February 6, 2022, claims that Netflix used 3 clips, which totaled about 50 seconds of the footage in episode 3. And importantly, included all this footage without getting a license. Now, Amira is claiming that other outlets did go and get a license, such as ABC, CBS, NBC. Now, sidebar, with these really big companies, it's so important that you have someone that is representing you that actually has contacts with these companies so you can meaningfully get something done when you're sending a demand letter or you're trying to even get a deal or make a pitch. Cold calling is so difficult, so kind of having someone who can walk you through the door, it helps a lot. All right, again, if you are a filmmaker, you're going to play in different territories. If you are doing something that is for profit, educational or non-educational, fictional, there are so many different things that come up, such as life rights, publicity rights. Let's not even talk about all the agreements that you need to have for all your films, your cast, your crew, trying to negotiate your distribution deal. What we're trying to focus on, at least for this case, is if this is a documentary, right? The mini-series is considered a documentary, then does fair use apply? Now, right now, in the realm of documentaries, the fair use analysis comes up so often. Even for things like insurance, we'll have clients who come and ask us to give them a fair use letter, right? So some kind of analysis. So providing analysis as to why we believe that non-licensed elements, let's say pictures and video clips in a certain documentary, may qualify as fair use. And so that can help with securing insurance, but also it can help with any claims that come up later on. So before we actually look at the Copyright Act, the general framework of fair use is that there is a legal way to illegally use someone else's copyrighted stuff in your film. So meaning you don't have to get permission from them, you don't have to pay for licenses, and if the filmmaker's use in fact qualifies as fair use, it ends up being a defense. It's a really important piece here, so that when a copyright infringement claim comes up, then the defense is going to be, well, it was fair use. But sometimes you still have to go through the exercise, acrobatic backflipping of litigation to just get the thing dismissed, because anyone can sue you at any time for anything. So with that being said, under 17 U.S.C. section 107, this is what states the doctrine of fair use. And there's 4 factors. And so this is what we as film lawyers help when analyzing the elements that are used in your documentary. So meaning we will literally sit there and watch your entire documentary that's ready to go. It's ready to be submitted to film festivals. And we're checking for every single piece of non-licensed elements. So meaning the pictures, the videos, the news clippings, the everything, to determine whether the way that you used it in fact qualifies as fair use. If it's fair use, again, that's good for you because you're not going to have to run out and get a license. So the first factor is whether your creative thing is of a commercial nature or is it a non-profit. Now, just so you know, even if you run a non-profit and you're doing a video, a court will look at whether your non-profit purpose is to nonetheless benefit you in a commercial fashion. So meaning just because, let's say, you're doing this for a non-profit charitable purpose, it doesn't mean you're out of the woods yet. What's the nature of the thing that you're using in your film? So generally speaking, if you're using something that is of a creative nature, so for example, if it's a song, right? A song is of a very creative nature. It's not like a factual thing where we're teaching people stuff. Things that are expressive in nature are actually going to get more protection and be a little more scrutinized within the framework of how you used it. The amount, how much was used, again, very important. And this one sometimes will get a ton of weight in the analysis because it's like if you have a documentary and you could have used like 2 seconds of someone else's clip to make your educational point. Or let's say you're talking about a crime that was committed at a certain time, and so you're using a publication's article, right, to like mirror this thing happened, support it with the facts. These are good things that work in tandem, but if you're using something that is not related at all to what you're talking about at that moment when you use it, your argument for fair use is a lot weaker. And then for the effect on the potential market for the value of the actual copyrighted work. So basically, are you diminishing the value of the original thing that you use, the picture, the video, by using it in your work? All right, so let's go back to the analysis. So with the Netflix serial killer documentary, and a YouTuber did this special pre-arrest video that no one else has. And there is a documentary that was then, I didn't do the deal, but probably licensed and or sold to Netflix. So meaning there was money made. So let's say we can assume that this was of a commercial nature. Now, just because ABC, CBS, NBC went and obtained licenses, it doesn't mean that the creators of this miniseries were also required to go and get a license. What I can tell you is that it's a pretty common business practice that these big companies, they probably will just go and license because they go, anyone can file a lawsuit at any time. And for copyright infringement, a claim for copyright infringement can be up to $150,000 in statutory damages if there's willfulness. And oh yeah, by the way, hiring a lawyer, not cheap either. Now, from what I'm reading, again, there were 3 clips used totaling 49 seconds of footage in that episode 3. If I was representing the YouTuber, I would imagine that the strongest factor is going to be factor 4, which is the effect upon the market and the value of the original thing. So could the YouTuber claim that essentially by having it in the Netflix miniseries, the original has now been devalued? Conversely, could the argument be that now it's actually more valuable because now you're going to have a bunch of people who are really interested and they'll go watch your entire interview and get you monetization, right? So view monetization on your original video because it's only 49 seconds, right? People want to see the whole thing. In the factor of how much was used, right? If the entire interview was 50 seconds and they used 50 seconds, well, using the whole thing, that's not good for the documentary side of things. But this is the idea behind fair use. Fair use is a judge-made doctrine. The idea is, even with the Copyright Act, it's to promote art and the development of science. And so that's why there are kind of these loopholes for people who do, for example, reaction videos, right? So again, on YouTube, they're reacting to people's content. And so long as they're doing it because it is commentary, criticism, newsworthy, they're transforming someone else's piece of content into something new. And all those examples typically qualify as fair use. But this is a determination that has to be made by a fact finder, so meaning a judge. And that's why this is difficult. That's why these companies oftentimes will go and just get a license because they kind of just want to avoid the headache. Now, looking at the complaint, we can see that the YouTuber, in fact, did sue Netflix as well as the involved production companies. And here's what I think is going to happen. Netflix is typically going to require indemnification. So meaning, hey, we're going to take your film. We're going to distribute your film. We're paying you some money. If a problem pops up and someone's like, hey, you did something wrong, you didn't license something, you have to go deal with it. We're going to get kicked out of the lawsuit. You have to pay all the attorney's fees. That's a standard term in Netflix deals. So I imagine Netflix is going to try to get out of the case pretty quick. So then ultimately it still comes down to the same thing. Will fair use be the winning argument here? And I'll say that for the complaint, there's actually only one count, which is for copyright infringement. So the interview contains copyrightable subject matter, which is protected under the Copyright Act. Plaintiff is the exclusive owner. Defendants reproduce, right? They used it in their miniseries. They published it. They sold it. Up, there we go. And the allegation is that this, in fact, was willful. So they're going for the jugular on the damages. So the question ends up becoming, is this a David and Goliath kind of situation, right? So this YouTuber was taken advantage of. The footage was stolen. This maybe doesn't qualify as fair use. As all lawyers are always going to say, it depends. It depends how each of these mini clips were used, in what context was it used, and is there enough of the 4 factors pursuant to 107 to have this qualify as fair use? I'm curious what you guys think. Drop a comment down below. And if you are a fan of this type of documentary, what's your favorite and why? We'll see you on the next one.